Hello everyone, I hope you're having a beautiful day. Today we're going to explore a heartbreaking moment in Diep and James's life, when a sudden pregnancy crisis in the hospital forces the doctors, and James, to face an impossible choice. Save the mother, save the baby, or somehow fight for both. If this emotional, hope-filled story touches you, don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss the next episodes. Morning came with the soft clink of cups and the hum of the kettle. But beneath the familiar sounds, there was a new tremor in Diep's hands as she reached for the tea canister. The kind of tremor that comes when a secret has just become a fact. The night before, in the small bathroom with its fogged mirror, a thin blue line had appeared on a test strip, steady and undeniable, and she had stared at it until the steam faded, the word pregnant whispering through her like both a blessing and an echo of the single girl she used to be. Standing outside an office with someone else's conditions in her pocket and a child already growing quietly inside. This time was different, she told herself as she poured hot water over tea leaves. This time there was a ring on her finger, a room rent folder with both their names written under responsible, a key they hung together by the door, and a man in the next room who folded laundry without being asked and read tiny print for neighbors who couldn't. Even so, the news sat in her chest like a small bird, wings beating against her ribs with every thought. Yes, no, tell him now and watch his face change, or hold it close a little longer to feel it alone. When James came into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes and kissing the top of Nai's head where she sat drawing, he noticed the careful way Diep set his cup down, the way she leaned on the counter for a second too long. "Are you dizzy?" he asked, steadying her elbow with a gentle hand. She hesitated, seeing in his face all the choices and fears the future might demand, then decided that any life built on half-truths would not be worthy of the small life now beginning. "I think," she said quietly, eyes on the table, "we might be adding another chair here." For a heartbeat he blinked, then the meaning landed. Surprise opened into something softer, his fingers tightening on her arm before he caught himself. "You're sure?" he whispered, and when she nodded, he let out a short, shaky laugh, half joy and half disbelief, tears brightening his eyes in a way she had never seen before. Nai looked up, catching the exchange like a bird catching a shift in the wind. "A baby?" she asked, sliding off her chair, her small face lit with delight and the faint shadow of old memories from times when adults made big promises and then went away. "Like, here? With us?" Diep knelt to her level and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Not today, not tomorrow," she said. "But if everything goes well, yes, here, with us." Under the thin morning light, the future opened like a hallway with many doors, diapers and midnight feedings, new drawings taped to the wall, maybe laughter, maybe tears, and quietly, behind it all, the question of whether this time life would be kind or ask for another heavy price. In the weeks that followed, their days took on a new kind of waiting. There were appointments to schedule, a clinic to visit, gentle questions to ask about age and risk and what it meant to be carrying a child again after years of being only mom to one. The nurse at the clinic was kind but frank, her voice soft as she explained that later pregnancies came with more watchfulness. "It doesn't mean anything bad," she said, tapping a chart with her pen. "It just means we walk slowly and listen carefully." That suited them. Walking slowly and listening carefully had become their way to move through a world that had not always been gentle. Still, as the calendar pages turned, small signs began to worry Diep in the quiet moments. Fatigue heavier than the usual tiredness of long days, dull cramps that came and went like unwelcome guests. She told herself not to be dramatic, not to let old fears color this new story. But in the back of her mind, a thought hummed. If life had already asked so much of her body once, what would it demand this time? And would her second child pay for the scars left by the first struggle? One afternoon, returning from the market with a bag of vegetables in one hand and Nee's fingers in the other, she felt a sudden pain spike low in her belly, hot and deep, stealing her breath mid-step. The chatter of vendors, the clatter of scales, the smell of frying dough all blurred as she clutched at her side. Me? Nee's voice sounded small and far away. The bag slipped from her hand, carrots tumbling onto the pavement and rolling toward a puddle. For a few seconds, she fought to stay upright, to smile and say it was nothing. But another wave of pain broke any pretense. She sank to her knees, one hand braced on the rough concrete, the other pressed to her abdomen as if she could shield the tiny life inside from whatever storm had just broken. Neighbors moved quickly, the way people do when they've watched someone grow up and know her by name. Someone grabbed the rolling carrots. Someone else spread a jacket under her knees. Another waved frantically at a passing car. And within minutes, James was at her side, face pale and chest heaving, having sprinted from the building when a boy burst in shouting his name. At the hospital, everything turned bright and cold and fast. The waiting room chairs, the antiseptic smell, the clipped voices at the desk. None of it felt like the gentle clinic visits they had shared before. They were rushed into an examination room where a doctor with serious eyes and tired hands spoke in terms that made Diep's stomach churn. Bleeding they could not yet see. A placenta problem, blood pressure too high. The baby's heart sometimes dipping, then racing. "We need to monitor her very closely," the doctor said to James, because husbands were easier to address than patients gripping the sides of the bed. "She is further along than might be safe for simple rest only. There are scenarios we need to prepare for." The phrase "prepare for" hung in the air, heavy as rain clouds that never quite move on. Hours blurred. Machines beeped a rhythm they all tried to believe meant stable and not fragile. Diep drifted in and out of a fog of pain and medication, catching fragments of conversation like scraps of a dream. Nurses discussing blood units, someone mentioning emergency surgery, another voice saying, "We'll try to buy time." James sat by her bed, one hand wrapped around hers, thumb tracing small circles over her skin, watching the green line on the monitor rise and fall as if it were the only thing anchoring him to the room. His mind swung between memories and possibilities, his father choosing image over people. The way "not my son" still echoed in the back of his skull. The promise he had made at the small office to stand with her in decisions about Nye, about money, about everything. Now there was a decision hovering that felt bigger than all the papers they had ever signed, and all the vows they had spoken over plain rings. Late into the night, when the hallway outside had thinned to a quiet echo, and only the nurse's footsteps broke the silence. The doctor returned, more solemn now, a different kind of tired in his face. "Her condition is changing," he said, glancing at the monitor where numbers flickered like uncertain answers. "The baby is under stress, and so is she. Continuing like this may endanger both. We may need to intervene surgically soon, and there are risks." The word risks did not scare James. Risk had been his shadow since the day his life split in two. What terrified him was the next sentence. "In the worst case," the doctor continued carefully, choosing each word, "we might reach a point where we can save the mother, or we can try to save the baby, but not both. We hope it does not come to that. But if it does, we will need to know her wishes, and yours." The choice was still hypothetical, a shadow at the edge of the room, but it moved closer with every beep of the monitor and every rise and fall of her chest. Diep's eyes were closed, lashes resting on pale cheeks, but she squeezed his hand weakly, as if she knew without hearing every word how cruel the question was that he was being asked to answer. There it was, the kind of decision no room rent folder had prepared them for, the kind no niche of tidy papers and warm tea could make simple. In his mind, scenes collided, the way Nie's small fingers curled around his when they crossed the street, the way Diep had taught him to chop vegetables and wash rice, the tiny, almost not there flutter he had felt under his palm when he rested his hand on her abdomen just a week before. Mother or child, child or mother. The very idea felt like a trap designed to break any answer and leave a permanent crack. Yes, no was no longer about speaking. It was about who might never speak again. He thought of Nie in the waiting area, small and worried, a child who had already lost too much and who had only just begun to believe that adults could stay. He thought of Diep's single mom, long gone but still present in their sayings and habits, and of how she had carried her daughter alone through hard seasons. If he chose the baby and lost Diep, he would be honoring new life but tearing a hole in the heart of the girl who now called him Dad under her breath. If he chose Diep and lost the baby, he would be saving the woman who had pulled him back from his own darkest edge, but he knew she might carry that loss in her bones forever, waking in the night to a silence where a cry should have been. The doctor was still talking, explaining percentages and scenarios, but the numbers blurred into a dull roar in his ears. Somewhere inside that storm of what-ifs and half-remembered terms, a quieter question rose. What would she have wanted him to say? This woman who once walked away from an office rather than sign away her voice. This mother who always put Nie's safety first. This single girl turned married woman who had written her own conditions in her careful handwriting. He looked down at her hand in his, at the ring catching the harsh fluorescent light, and felt time start to thin. The ticking of the monitor pressing like a hand at his back toward an answer that would shape all their futures. The doctor's gaze was steady, waiting. "And we hope we won't have to make this choice," he repeated. "But if it becomes unavoidable, you need to decide whose life we prioritize." The room seemed to shrink. The bed, the machines, the folder on the chair with their names on the outside all closing in on the single point of decision. James drew in a breath that felt too big for his lungs and leaned closer to Diep, his voice shaking as he whispered her name. Not sure if she could hear him. Not sure if somewhere inside she was already shouting a preference he would never quite catch. Every promise he had ever made, every scar they both carried, every kindness they had shared at the kitchen table gathered behind this moment like a silent crowd watching to see what he would do. As he lifted his head to meet the doctor's eyes, the question in the room sharpened to a blade's edge, and for an instant, it was impossible to tell which answer would hurt less, or whether any answer could possibly leave them whole, or whether this was the night when love itself would be forced to choose who stayed and who slipped away. For a long moment after the doctor finished speaking, James felt as if the room had been emptied of air, as if every sound, the beeping monitor, the shuffle of rubber soles in the corridor, the soft hiss of oxygen, had been pulled away, and all that remained was that cruel, impossible question hovering between them. If the worst came, whose life should they try to hold on to? The woman who had already saved him once from his own breaking, or the child who had not yet had a chance at anything at all? His mouth was dry, his fingers numb where they curled around Diep's hand. But eventually thought managed to push through the panic, not in the form of numbers or logic, but in the shape of their life together. He saw Ni's face in his mind, the way she had slowly begun to rest her full weight against him when she fell asleep on the couch, trusting he would not move away. He saw Diep at the kitchen table in the dim light, writing her conditions in careful handwriting, always placing Ni first, always choosing the living, breathing child in front of her over every what if. He thought of how she had walked as a single girl raised by a single mom, carrying her daughter alone through years when no one else wrote their name under responsible. And he heard his own vow in that plain office echo back, to stand with her in decisions about Ni, about money, about everything. Slowly, he lifted his head to meet the doctor's gaze. "If you reach that point," he said, each word heavy but clear, "you save her. You save Lai Tu Diep. She has a daughter who needs her, and a life she has already built with her own hands. But please," his voice broke, then steadied, "please fight for our baby with everything you have until the very last moment. Do not give up on either of them unless there is truly no choice left." It was not an answer that made the dilemma neat or clean, but it was the only one that matched the woman he loved, the woman who had always chosen responsibility over fantasy. The doctor nodded, a shadow of relief touching his tired features. Having direction did not make the decision easier, but it would keep the team from freezing if the night turned worse. "We will do everything possible for both," he said quietly. "Right now we prepare for surgery. It may be the best chance to help them." Nurses moved with a new urgency, checking lines, adjusting monitors, murmuring reassurance to Diep even as they worked. James bent over her, brushing damp hair from her forehead. Her eyes opened just a slit, dark and unfocused, but enough to find his shape. "Ni," she whispered, the first word that managed to escape the fog. "She's here," he said, leaning close, his fingertips trembling on her cheek. "She's with the neighbor in the waiting room. She knows you're fighting. We're all here." For an instant, a flicker of something like peace passed over her face, and he wondered if somewhere inside she had already made the same choice he had just voiced. "Stay," she breathed, barely audible. "With her. With them." Then the medications pulled her under, her hand slackening in his just as the team began to roll the bed toward the double doors. Watching those doors swing closed around the metal frame, he felt as if a part of his own body had been wheeled away. The urge to follow, to force himself into the sterile light, burned in his chest. But the nurse gently blocked his path with a practiced firmness. "You did what you could," she said. "Now let us do what we can. Go sit with your girl. She needs a hand to hold too." In the waiting area, the bright colors of plastic chairs and faded posters about vaccinations looked almost cruel against the fear in Ni's eyes as she rushed to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. The neighbor, hair hastily pinned, worry lines deepened by the fluorescent lights, stood up from her chair. "They took her in?" she asked, her voice small. James nodded, swallowing hard. "They're operating," he answered. "Things are complicated." He didn't elaborate. Some words were too sharp for a child's ears. When Ni looked up, searching his face for the one thing she wanted, he could only kneel and gather her close. "Are they going to bring my me and the baby back?" she asked, her voice trembling in that high, thin way that comes when tears have not yet decided whether to fall. "Tell them to choose both. They have to choose both." There it was, spoken in the plain, impossible language of a child who did not understand medical terms but understood love. He closed his eyes briefly, letting her weight ground him. "They are trying to save both," he said, choosing the present tense carefully. "They are fighting for your me and the baby at the same time. We asked them to." We told them how important both are. The neighbor sat beside them, her hand resting on Nai's shoulder, a steady, quiet presence. Time in hospitals is measured in strange ways. Minutes stretch and twist, anchored only by the regular buzz of the wall clock and the occasional squeak of wheels in the hallway. James found himself listening so hard for footsteps that his ears buzzed, every distant door opening sounding like it might carry news that would split his world. To keep from falling apart, he asked Nai to tell him stories from home, about the onion jars on the windowsill, about the way Diep sang under her breath when stirring soup, little rituals that reminded them both of the life waiting beyond these walls. Each small memory was a kind of prayer. May there still be a kitchen, a table, a star in the window for them all to return to. After what felt like hours, and might have been less, a nurse appeared in the doorway, scanning the room until her eyes landed on them. She motioned for James to come closer. He felt his knees weaken as he walked, as if the floor had turned to water. "They are both alive," she said without preamble, understanding that this was the first and most important piece of information to give. The words hit him like a wave, leaving him dizzy with relief. "But?" he croaked, because of course there was a but. "Your wife lost a lot of blood," the nurse continued, "but she responded to the transfusions. She is in recovery now, still under anesthesia. The baby was delivered early, very small and very tired. We have him in the neonatal unit. The next hours and days will be critical. His lungs are working, but they need help." It was good news wrapped in uncertainty, hope wrapped in fear. "Can I see her?" he asked. "And him?" The nurse glanced toward Nai, who was staring from across the room, eyes wide. "One at a time," she said gently. "We'll take you to her first. Later, once we know she's stable, and as long as the machines allow it, we'll let you see the baby through the glass." In the recovery room, the harsh lights were softened by a curtain drawn halfway, giving the illusion of privacy. Diep lay pale against the white sheets, lips dry, a tangle of lines and tubes tracing paths over her skin. The ring on her finger, dulled by antiseptic, caught the light when he took her hand, and that small glint felt like proof that everything they had promised to each other in the plain office still held, even under wires and bandages. He sat carefully in the chair beside her, their fingers entwined, and began speaking quietly even though she could not respond yet. About Ni waiting with the neighbor, about the nurse's words, about the baby they had not yet seen. "They're both here," he told her. "You and our child. The doctors say it's going to be a fight, but they are not giving up on either of you, and neither am I." As he spoke, he realized that his choice in the corridor, asking them to prioritize her if forced, had not been a betrayal of the baby. Instead, life had, for now, granted them both, though at a price that would take time to fully understand. He wondered how she would feel when she woke, whether she would thank him or question him, whether the weight of what-ifs would settle in her bones the way it already pressed against his ribs. When a nurse gently tapped his shoulder, signaling that they needed to adjust her lines, he reluctantly released her hand and followed another staff member down a different corridor toward the neonatal unit. The room there was bright and strangely quiet, filled with plastic domes and soft beeping, a world of tiny limbs and blinking lights. The baby, his son, he realized with a start, though no one had yet said the word, lay curled in an incubator, skin almost translucent, chest fluttering with rapid, shallow breaths. Wires and tubes made him look more like a fragile experiment than a person. But when James pressed his palm against the glass, the infant's fingers twitched, as if sensing warmth on the other side. "He's a fighter," the nurse murmured. "But the next 72 hours are very important. We'll know more then. His lungs, his heart, his brain, all of them have to decide if they're ready to stay." That conditional language, "if they're ready to stay," slipped into his mind like a new kind of yes-no, this time asked of a body barely the length of his forearm. "Can he hear me?" James asked, fighting back tears. "Talk to him anyway," the nurse advised. "It won't hurt." So he did. He told the tiny boy about a kitchen with a noisy kettle, a table with a paper star in the window, an older sister who drew hearts that could stretch to fit new arrivals, a mother who had carried him through pain and fear to this bright, humming room. He did not promise him the world. He simply promised that if he chose to stay, they would all be there, day after day, to make the world he woke into as gentle as they could. Hours later, when he returned to the waiting area, eyes red, shoulders hunched with exhaustion, Nye ran to him again. "Did you see them?" she whispered. He knelt down, drawing her close. "Yes," he said. "Your Me is sleeping. The doctors are helping her get strong again. Your baby brother is very small, very brave, and he's in a special room with machines that help him breathe. We don't know yet how strong he will be, but he's here." She processed this, chewing on her lip. "Can I see him?" she asked. "Not today," he replied. "Soon, I hope. For now, we send him pictures from our hearts." She frowned at that, then suddenly brightened. "We can draw," she suggested. "We can draw our kitchen and the onion jars and the star and the table with 4 chairs. Then he will know where to come." It was a child's version of faith, that images and intentions could build a bridge from a plastic box to a cluttered, loving home. Over the next days, the hospital became their second house, one where visiting hours dictated their rhythms and every phone vibration made James's heart jump. Diep woke slowly, threading together fragments of pain, relief, and the hollow ache of knowing that her body had been opened and stitched while she slept. When he finally told her, in careful, simple words, what the doctor had asked him and what he had answered, she closed her eyes and turned her face toward the wall, and for a terrifying moment, he thought she would turn away from him forever. Then she reached blindly for his hand and squeezed. "You chose what I would have chosen," she whispered hoarsely. "I would have told them the same. We protect the living child. We fight for the one coming. We accept what we cannot control, but it still hurts." Tears slipped from the corners of her eyes, and he let them fall, not trying to turn them into gratitude or anything else. In quieter moments, when the monitors hummed steadily and the next test result was hours away, they spoke in snatches about what might come if their son survived. The extra work, the late nights, the strain on their already thin finances. But always their words circled back to the same unresolved question. Would he stay? The answer, the doctors told them, lay in numbers and scans and the stubbornness of tiny organs, all of which would reveal themselves over time, not in one dramatic pronouncement. When they finally returned home for a night, leaving the hospital with its bright corridors and humming machines to the care of night staff, the apartment felt both comforting and strange. The key turned in the lock as it always had. The table waited with a few unwashed cups. The paper star still hung in the window. But now there was a space no one had yet filled. A mental fourth chair. A room that might someday hold a crib, or might remain simply a quiet corner where Nye spread her drawings. She taped her latest picture to the wall, 4 small figures at a table, one much smaller than the others, with a line of dots between the baby and the window like a path. Underneath, in uneven letters, she had written, "Come home soon." Neither adult corrected her grammar. Both of them stood for a long time looking at the picture, feeling how it held both hope and risk in the same lines. That night, as they lay in the narrow bed, careful of her stitches, listening to the distant hum of traffic and the ticking of their cheap clock, neither could say with certainty what the next episode of their life would hold. Whether the phone would ring at dawn with good news or another rush to the hospital. Whether their son's lungs would choose to stay. Whether their little found family would grow by one or learn to live with a different kind of empty chair. All they knew, as they reached across the small space between them to link fingers over the blanket, was that the decision they had faced in that white hallway had not broken them apart, and that whatever came, they would walk toward it together, one anxious, determined step at a time, leaving the question of, "And then what happens?" hanging gently over the kitchen table like another star, waiting to be answered in the days to come. In this deeply emotional chapter, Diep discovers she is pregnant, and at first, the news brings quiet joy to her small family, her, James, and little Nye. But soon, troubling pains send her from the market straight to the hospital, where monitors, bright lights, and tense doctors replace their warm kitchen table. As her condition worsens, the doctor warns James that in the worst case, they may be forced to choose, save the mother or the baby. Remembering Diep's life as a single mom and Nie's need for her, James asks them to prioritize her life while still fighting with everything they have for the child. Emergency surgery follows, and long hours of fear. In the end, both Diep and their tiny, fragile baby boy survive, but his future is uncertain, leaving the family in a tender, hopeful waiting, wondering what will happen next.